Discovered, a pregnant young woman's heartbreaking predicament led to an amazing transformation. Emily Harper stood at the edge of her future, a turbulent intersection of dreams and despair. The local diner buzzed around her, waitresses rushing with steaming plates and conversations blending into a white noise of normalcy. But she felt like an outsider overwhelmed by an unplanned pregnancy, the remnants of a devastating breakup weighing heavily on her chest. Warm sunlight filtered through the window, but it couldn't thaw the growing chill of expectations and judgments from the small-town community that had raised her. She used to be the pride of her family, a bright star destined for university. Now, just a single mother-to-be grappling with the shattering of her idyllic plans, the whispers followed her like shadows, remnants of conversations she couldn't escape. They spoke of her, the girl who had it all, now reduced to this, a statistic of failure, an emblem of disappointment. Each day, as she served coffee and flipped burgers, Emily could feel her dreams slipping further away. The weight of her choices bore down on her, filling her with self-doubt and existential dread. Could she still aspire to be more than what her life had turned into? Or had she lost that dream forever? As she wiped down the counter, her heart raced at the thought of the future. How would she raise her child alone? Would her family ever forgive her? Thoughts tumbled painfully through her mind. And just when she thought she couldn't bear the burden any longer, fate introduced her to Grace, a local widow whose pottery studio had seen better days. It started with an awkward smile exchanged while Emily took an order. The elderly woman's gentle presence drew her in, offering something unexpected: understanding. "Art is therapeutic," Grace had said, her voice tender as a feather. "It can help you find the pieces you think you've lost." Emily felt a flicker of hope. Maybe in this pottery studio, she could rediscover herself, through teaching and creating. Yet, with each day spent at the studio, the fear of failure loomed larger. What if her family's expectations crushed her new aspirations? And what if she couldn't keep it all together? Motherhood, a new career she was only beginning to explore, and the judgment of a community that had always scrutinized her. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Emily began to lean into her newfound role as an aspiring artist and educator, her world tilted again. Her estranged former partner, the very person who had propelled her to this breaking point, reached out for help. The message was simple: "I'm in trouble." Torn between the fierce principles of loyalty instilled in her since childhood and her desperate desire for independence, she grappled with an agonizing choice. Would helping him cause her to abandon her dreams? Was she betraying the strength she had fought hard to grasp? Everything she had built seemed on the verge of collapse. As she prepared for her first exhibition, the uncertainty of her path threatened to engulf her. She feared the judgment of her family, her community's whispers echoing in her mind, drowning out the timid voice that urged her to push forward. Was she marching toward a new identity or walking back into shadows she had only just begun to escape? In that moment, Emily gazed out at the faces around her, an audience full of uncertainty, mixed with her own flickering hope. The stakes rose. Standing on the precipice of a life-altering moment, every breath felt laden with the weight of choice, her spirit suspended in air. Would she seize the moment to redefine who she was, or would she allow the past to pull her back into its grasp? The questions loomed as she steadied herself, teetering on the brink of destiny. The morning of Emily's exhibition dawned with a mix of anxiety and determination. She awoke to the sound of rain pattering against her window. In the softened light, she could sense the familiar weight of doubt creeping into her thoughts. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her attire, a simple yet elegant dress, an outfit that she hoped would signal to the world that she was more than just an expectant mother. She made her way to the pottery studio, where the pieces she crafted were lined up, each representing a fragment of her healing journey. As she approached the door, she hesitated, the memories of her past racing through her mind. The very act of stepping inside felt like crossing a threshold between two dimensions of herself, the girl who had first dreamed of grandeur and the woman she hoped to become, a resilient mother and artist. As she entered the studio, Grace was already there, meticulously arranging Emily's pieces for the display. The older woman turned with a smile that glimmered with pride and warmth. "You're going to be great, Emily. Just remember, it's not about perfection, it's about expression." Taking a deep breath, Emily absorbed Grace's affirmation. Yet, the looming doubt nagged at her, whispering that the only thing people would notice was her circumstances. It was a thought so potent it threatened to erode her newfound strength. "Can I really do this?" she asked, a quiver in her voice barely audible. Grace paused, her eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "You've already done something incredibly brave, daring to share your story. You're here after all that has happened. Just embrace that." The flood of vulnerability she felt made her uncomfortable. Should she reveal the turmoil of her personal life, or keep it all inside? Sharing could connect her to the audience but also expose her fragile heart. Emily quickly resolved to showcase her art as a protective barrier shielded by the clay and colors she had carefully molded. These pieces carried emotion, the anger, the sadness, the hope for a better future. That was the essence she would share. As the exhibition began, the studio filled with patrons, some familiar faces from the diner, others from the community at large. With each passing moment, she felt the eyes on her, catching her breath as they leaned in to scrutinize her work. Their discussions melded into a lyrical hum, but Emily focused on the clay rather than the crowd. Soon, she spotted an unexpected face among the visitors. It was her former partner, standing awkwardly at the entrance. The sight triggered a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, disappointment, and, surprisingly, the urge to forgive bubbled within her. He shouldn't be here, he had left her when she needed support the most. Yet the heart often defies logic, and she felt a sliver of empathy for the man who had reached out in a moment of crisis. Gathering her resolve, she glanced at Grace, who nodded subtly as if prompting her to confront the past that had so long haunted her. A decision crystallized in her mind. This was her exhibition, a new chapter where she could dictate the narrative of her life. Taking a deep breath, Emily walked towards him. She needed to know, was this a plea for help or an attempt to reclaim authority over her future? "Why are you here?" she asked, the words laced with both hurt and defiance. The response was weak but filled with desperation. "I messed up, Emily. More than I can express. I need your help." The moment hung heavy between them, electric with unspoken tension and realized dreams. It was a pivotal moment. Would she go back again, surrendering the hard-won growth she had achieved, or would she reinforce her newfound identity and let go of the guilt that had shrouded her for too long? As the weight of the past pressed down on her once more, Emily glanced back at her pottery pieces glimmering in the studio light, each one a testament to her resilience. This decision could redefine her path yet again. And as she stood there suspended between the past and the future, the reality sank in. Her choice would not only alter the course of her life but also the narrative she had begun to write. What was she willing to risk, and what was worth holding on to? The moment felt monumental. The true confrontation was just beginning. Emily's heart raced as she stood in front of her former partner, each beat a reminder of everything she had worked to overcome. The noise of the exhibition faded into a haze. She focused on his face, tracing the lines of regret etched across it, memories flashing of their shared laughter and dreams that now felt like shards of glass littering her past. "I need your help," he repeated, his voice almost pleading. The words hung heavy, resounding in the silent space between them. Emily felt a mixture of anger and disbelief. Help? Did he even understand what he had put her through? The very notion of needing him felt like a betrayal of all her struggles of the silent night spent piecing herself back together. She took a step back, willing her voice not to tremble. "Help with what? You left when I needed you most. Now you want me to, what? Open my life to you again?" His gaze faltered, yet desperation lingered in his eyes. "I know I failed you, Emily, and I can't change the past. But I want to help you now. There is something I need to discuss, something important. The urge to refuse, to turn her back on the past, clashed with the curiosity gnawing at her. Part of her wanted to free herself from his gravitational pull, while another part yearned for closure. She considered his words and the pain that had led her here, where she had the chance to set boundaries that mattered. "Why should I trust you?" she managed, her voice steady, though inside she waged a war against her lingering feelings for him. She could sense that trusting him again might open old wounds she had thought were healing, but perhaps were only bandaged over. He seemed to shrink under her question, as if realizing the weight of his actions weighed not just on her, but increasingly on him. "I messed up, but I'm different now. I've been working on myself, on understanding why I ran away. I'm not here to disrupt your life or take away your strength." The sincerity in his voice disarmed her slightly, threading through her defenses. Little by little, her mind was clearing, and an uneasy curiosity stirred beneath the anger. If he had changed, what did that mean for her? Could she allow herself to consider the possibility of reconciliation, or was that simply a path to more heartache? As the moment stretched, Emily felt a weight shift inside her, a resolution forming. She didn't have to throw open the doors of her life, but perhaps it was time to peel back the layers carefully, just enough to see if anything useful could arise from the ashes of their shared history. In doing so, she might discover yet another facet of her growth, a sense of empowerment birthed from boundaries, not barriers. "I'll consider it on my terms. But I won't allow you to hold power over me again," she said, her tone incisive yet firm. The acknowledgement of her terms felt liberating, a strength she hadn't anticipated accessing. But as she turned to return to the safety of her art, questions loomed. Was this the beginning of a path toward understanding and healing, or merely a new potential source of pain? As she glanced at the pieces of clay, vibrant and expressive, she understood they were not just her past but symbols of her ongoing transformation. She was not the same girl anymore. She was a force that could carve out her own narrative. In that moment, standing at the crossroads of hope and hesitation, a new realization dawned. Every choice she made would echo into her future. The intricacies of her journey were yet to be mapped. The exhibition filled her with a sense of future possibilities, reigniting her passion for self-discovery. How could she balance her past and present, nurturing her growth while protecting her heart? With each breath, she felt that she was once again standing on the brink of something vital, facing not only her relationship with him, but her truest self. Would she reclaim her story, writing the next chapter fueled by newfound clarity, or would old scars threaten to interfere? The tension hung in the air, waiting to unfold. Emily stood in her studio, the warmth of soft, amber lights embracing her as twilight spilled into the room. The clay at her fingertips felt alive, whispering secrets of creativity and resilience. Each shape she molded was a testament to her battles, a manifestation of the hopes she had silently cradled along her journey of self-discovery. Yet, despite the comforting activity, a tempest brewed within her, a confusion that threatened to drown out her accomplishments. Taking a deep breath, she leaned into her work, finding solace within the familiar textures of the earth. But her thoughts dragged her back to the conversation that lingered like an unwelcome specter. The uncertainty surrounding her past with him weighed down her creative spirit, intertwining with the inspiration that usually flowed effortlessly. "I won't be a prisoner to my past," she whispered, half to herself, half to the room that had borne witness to her transformations. Emily intensified her focus and reached for a lump of clay, attempting to pour into it her current turmoil. Each press of her fingers became her cathartic release, a silent declaration of her goal to reclaim her narrative. As she shaped the clay into a towering sculpture, imagery of her past began to form within it. The weight of betrayal pressed against the structure, memories of loss and hurt stealing the object beneath her hands. Yet within that sadness, she found strength, a revelation that every painful moment was not just a scar but also a teacher. Her change wasn't merely about avoiding pain or chasing dreams, it was about understanding the beauty born from her struggles. With every curving line and every stroke, the sculpture morphed into a self-portrait, raw yet radiant. It was a reflection of her growth, a woman forged in the fire of heartache, emerging not merely unscathed but transformed. This realization grounded her, anchoring her resolve. She had come too far to let flickers of doubt extinguish her journey. As the sculpture took shape, Emily felt the remnants of anxiety dissipating, replaced by clarity. The weight on her chest began to lighten as she envisioned presenting her work at the upcoming showcase. It wasn't merely an exhibition of clay figures, it was a mosaic of her life, a narrative sewn together with threads of survival, courage, and unshakable resolve. Yet, even as a wave of excitement surged through her, doubts crashed like waves onto the shore of her newfound clarity. What if he approached her again? What if confronting him became necessary for her to soar further? She was keenly aware that revisiting their past could either nourish her growth or drown her in old echoes. This duality was something she needed to confront head-on, not just for him, but for herself. In that moment of insight, she recognized the true essence of her art. It was about vulnerability, strength, and the intricate dance between letting go and holding on. Every scar tells a story, she muttered, smoothing the edges of her creation, as if polishing her own narrative. It was time to decide how her past would shape her future. She could either allow it to constrain her or determine its fate through her choices. An empowering rush filled her, illuminating an uncharted path waiting to be walked. As she completed her piece, the canvas of her mind brimmed with possibilities, waiting for her to embrace them. What if this was not just about her art but also about redefining her connections, not only with her past partner but with herself, too? That night, her dreams swirled with images of melting pot clay and shadows of vulnerability. A new flame ignited a desire to embrace both the light and dark corners of her life. Yet, shadows still loomed. Would she have the courage to reach out and not just create for herself, but to also confront the truths hidden in her heart? With dawn's light peeking through her window, another question loomed heavily: could she summon the strength within to address those insecurities and face the truth of their past? Emily woke with a sense of urgency coursing through her veins, a blend of anxiety and determination melding into an electrifying purpose. She squinted against the sunlight filtering through her window, casting luminous patterns across her cluttered studio. There it was again, the unavoidable call to confront her past. Almost as if the clay itself, with its earthy richness, was demanding her attention, beckoning her to not only mold its form but also confront the memories she had left in its depths. With a fresh resolve, Emily stood in front of her newly completed sculpture, a testament not just to her artistic prowess but a reflection of her emotional journey. The self-portrait loomed over her, a guardian of her battles, each curve echoing her past struggles. It was inviting, yet intimidating. Could her next step serve to challenge her even further? Fingers tingling with anticipation, she began her day with a ritual, a deep dive into her unfiltered thoughts. She sat at a small desk littered with sketchbooks, paints, and her quiet musings. What do I truly want? She whispered, the question hanging in the air like a ghost. The notion sent ripples of unease through her. She didn't want to backtrack or lose herself again in old feelings. But perhaps it wasn't about returning, it was the necessity to redefine her narrative on her own terms. The idea of contacting him consumed her. Could reconciliation bring clarity, or would it ignite unresolved wounds? Visions of their past dances, the laughter, the tenderness, traded for bitterness, danced behind her eyelids. She plucked a piece of paper from a nearby stack and began to write. Her thoughts flowed freely, memories entwined with what-ifs and should-haves. Writing became a lifeline, capturing not merely her feelings but the story she was piecing together. I am stronger than my past, she scrawled fervently. Each word solidified her growing conviction. She couldn't deny that confronting him could be another vital step in unearthing the layers of her identity. Would revisiting that relationship offer insight or only cause further turmoil? This time, she would approach it with courage, ready to mold her past into something she could own and harness. Setting her pen down, she felt a tremor of excitement. This was it, she was ready to act. With each passing moment, the decision solidified in her mind, morphing from a distant cloud of doubt to a clear and present opportunity. What if confronting him brought about a catharsis, an unveiling of truths she had buried deep beneath, gratitude mixed with resentment? Leaving her studio felt like shedding layers she had outgrown. The city buzzed around her, indifferent and alive all at once. Emily strolled through the streets, her heart racing. She stopped outside a quaint cafe where they had shared a few of their best memories. A strange mixture of nostalgia and trepidation washed over her. It was now or never. The soft chime of the bell as she entered jolted her composure. She scanned the cozy tables for a sign of him. Was he even still here? What if he didn't want to see her? The possibilities weighed heavy on her mind. But an inner voice nudged her, "This is your journey, your reclaiming." As the barista prepared her order, Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket. The sensation jolted her, pulling her from the brink of deep contemplation. Hesitantly, she glanced down, stomach twisting as she saw his name flash across the screen. Her heart raced with every second. The moment she had dreaded yet anticipated had arrived. With breath held tight in her chest, she decided it was time to push forward. The past had shaped her, but she would not let it define her. She swiped to answer, the calling warmth mingling with the fear that surged beneath her skin. "Hello," she said, her voice steady although her heart raced. "Emily." I didn't expect you to answer with those words. The door to her past swung open. The intertwining of doubt and resolution lurked just beneath the surface. What would this conversation reveal? The moment of truth approached with unrelenting intensity, echoing the patterns of her sculpted self-portrait looming in her mind. The question hung between them, was this a beginning or a painful echo? The air hung thick with unspoken tension as Emily steadied herself. She could hear his hesitant breath on the other end, a sound that was achingly familiar yet foreign. The memories, not all of them warm, flooded in as she processed the weight of that single word, "Hello." "Hi," she replied, forcing firmness into her tone. "It's been a while." "Yeah, it has." His voice was gentle, tinged with an undertone of uncertainty. "I didn't think you'd want to talk." "I wasn't sure either." The truth slid out before she could overthink it. This wasn't just a casual chat, it was the intersection of two lives that had taken different paths but remained tangled in a complex web of emotions. She could almost envision their shared history as an unwieldy sculpture, a masterpiece with cracks and flaws that needed dissecting. "Why did you call?" he probed, the silence that followed feeling heavier than it should have, filled with things they had left unsaid. "I wanted to confront my past," she admitted. It felt strange saying those words aloud. A part of her worried about tossing a grenade into the conversation, but the other half craved the catharsis of honesty. There was power in laying bare her intentions. "Confront your past?" he echoed, curiosity piqued. "You mean us?" "Yes. And how I've changed. How I need to acknowledge the impact you've had on me, good and bad." The acknowledgement felt like a chisel breaking away clay, uncovering the raw shape beneath. The feelings she had held captive for too long began to spill into their conversation, each word tethering her closer to what she sought, understanding. "I don't want to dredge up painful memories," he interjected, furrowing a brow she could almost picture from the mellow tones in his voice. "There's so much that happened, I know," Emily interrupted gently. "But avoiding it won't change anything. I need to own my experiences. I need to know how I became who I am today." An unexpected silence filled the gap between them, allowing Emily a moment to gauge her courage. "We've both been through so much since everything fell apart." The vulnerability in her admission carved through the walls they had built between them. "I didn't even know how to process it," he finally replied, his words tinged with regret. "Have you really moved on?" The question hit close to home. Emily's thoughts spiraled back to her studio, a space filled with chaotic creativity, a cathartic refuge that had slowly morphed into a canvas for all her unyielding emotions. "I have. I'm learning to mold my past into something I can handle. But I need to understand you in that process." "What do you want from this conversation, Emily?" His directness startled her, but it also pierced through the confusing layers of her own motives. "To be free," she answered, adrenaline coursing through her veins once more. "Not just from the pain, but from the nagging question of what could have been. I'm afraid that unless I confront it, it'll linger like a haunting presence in my work, in my life. Let us be honest, it would be easier to forget, he offered, a wry humor lacing his tone. Easier, yes, but not desirable. There was finality in Emily's voice as if she had reached the apex of a decision. Part of the reason I've called is because I want to approach our shared past with clarity. Paint it with honesty instead of resentment. The conversation shifted as Emily laid bare her intentions, navigating through layers of hurt and healing with each exchange. This wasn't mere nostalgia, it was a reckoning with what had once felt insurmountable. Each moment spent reconnecting molded her resolve into something firmer, akin to the clay she worked with, shaping her own evolution artistically and personally. Then let us explore it together, he finally suggested, a hint of optimism sparking in their shared space. If this is what you need, let us do it. Emily could feel her heart settling, uncertainty mingling with a promising sense of newfound empowerment. Thank you, she replied, her spirit rekindled. I think we both owe it to ourselves. As the conversation unfolded, a newfound determination welled inside her, unraveling old insecurities with every revelation. It was time to conjure the truths she had buried, to reclaim her story piece by piece, yet, in the backdrop of this unfolding catharsis, another wave of anxiety crested. What would this journey return to her? Would facing the latent emotions truly lead to the growth she desperately sought? As that irrepressible question hung suspended in the air between them, Emily set her eyes on the path ahead, fueled by the promise of profound change both within her and their shared narrative. And more questions lingered. What revelations awaited her in the depths of her past, and would they lead her to discover an unforeseen strength she had yet to realize? The call had ended, leaving Emily suspended in a liminal space, the gravity of their conversation heavy in her chest. It was as if she had leaped into the void, adrenaline still coursing through her veins as her thoughts raced. What if this path did not lead to the clarity she craved? Questions ricocheted in her mind, nudging the walls of her carefully constructed resolve. Yet, in that silence, she felt a flicker of hope, an ember igniting in the depths of uncertainty. She moved to her studio, letting the familiarity of the chaotic sanctuary envelop her. The midday sun streamed in, casting warm light onto canvases that had long awaited her touch. Here, she could explore her feelings through art, sculpting the enigmatic emotions that quaked beneath her surface. Sitting before a blank canvas, she picked up her brush, heart thrumming with the potential for transformation. Each stroke thudded rhythmically, paralleling her pulse. In the quiet hum of creativity, she contemplated, how could she channel the confrontation of her past into her work? What truths would her art unseat from within? She dipped the brush in deep indigo and swirled it on the canvas. Every flick of color became a catharsis, unraveling the tightly wound fears that had clung to her heart. Memories intertwined with paint, each hue capturing a moment of estrangement, of affinity, of change. Like softer clay molding under pressure, it became evident that both her emotions and her art were intrinsically linked. They demanded to be acknowledged, shaped, and expressed. Emily soon realized that the true essence of her artistic journey lay not just in creating something beautiful, but in embracing the ugly parts, the ones marred by betrayal, sorrow, and longing. Her art could serve as both witness and sanctuary, where emotions formed mountains and valleys that needed traversing. With each session spent immersed in paint, she began uncovering a hidden resilience. It was liberating to confront difficult memories rather than bury them further. The act of translating her pain into visual form felt revolutionary, fueling her creative vulnerability. But alongside this burgeoning self-discovery, self-doubt coiled in her mind. The notion lingered: would she reveal too much? Was it unwise to let the world see these raw emotions laid bare? Art was personal, yet vulnerable, and the thought of potential judgment pierced through her newfound fervor. After hours of painting, she stepped back, observing the chaos and clarity amalgamated before her. Could this one piece encapsulate her growth, the confrontation of her past, and the beautiful, troublesome tapestry of emotions she bore? It felt awkwardly unfinished, yet the unease stirred something profound within her. Taking a deep breath, she whispered to herself, "Can I be brave enough to show this?" The question echoed loudly, not just in the realm of art, but in the corridors of her life. Stepping away from the canvas, she realized the confrontation wasn't just a private affair, it was about dismantling the barriers that held her captive. Determined, Emily began sketching The Reckoning as the title of her new exhibition. It would encapsulate her journey, reflecting both the tempest of emotions and the resolve to rise from them. Would others resonate with her vulnerability, or would they shy away from the raw exposure? What would it mean to share her story so openly? Those questions lingered as she sought the courage to embrace both her art and her memories fully. She knew the exhibition would require more than illustrations. It demanded heart, honesty, and relentless bravery. Emily mulled over her thoughts by the window, watching as the sun sank gracefully into dusk. In her mind, the flicker of resolve ignited into a flame. The time had come to reconcile the pain and beauty she had both lived and created, and yet, looming ahead was the critical choice: would she allow others to witness this unveiling? The moment approached when she'd have to decide if she would step into the light, exposing the layers of her past, or retreat into the shadows of uncertainty once again. Could she truly muster the courage required for this transformation, not only for herself but for an audience waiting on the edge of their seats, craving authenticity? The question gnawed at her: what lay on the other side of this confrontation, waiting to be revealed? Emily awoke the next morning, the weight of her decision pressing down as heavily as the blanket that cocooned her. The sun had barely crested the horizon, casting the room in a soft, muted light. Each thought brought her closer to clarity yet further into doubt. She rolled out of bed, her mind racing with potential outcomes, quelling her appetite. As she brewed her coffee, the familiar aroma filled the space around her, blending with the remnants of paint lingering in her studio. It was time to move past initial awe and delve into the grittiness of her emotional landscape, to decide how much she would reveal. Today was a day for action, not hesitation. She settled at her table, surrounded by sketches and canvases that represented not just fleeting ideas but an introspection that hinted at deeper truths. The title of her exhibition lingered in her mind, so potent it felt like it had roots in her very being. The Reckoning was not just an exhibition, it would be an intimate reckoning with herself, a daring invitation for others to share the burden of her truth. But how could she translate such vulnerability into art without losing herself? She grasped her coffee cup, savoring the warmth. With a swift determination, she opened her sketchbook, ink lines pouring onto the pages like the more tumultuous thoughts flooding her mind, yet, beneath this growing resolution, the shadows of her insecurities loomed larger. Would anyone actually connect to what she created? Fishing through layers of memories, she started drafting the pieces for her show. The first sketch emerged: a dark landscape punctuated by a single, radiant figure. It illustrated the helplessness that came with feeling trapped between past traumas and her desire for resolute rebirth. Lost in thought, she barely noticed the hours slip by until hunger gnawed at her stomach like an impatient child. Emily stood from her chair, stretching her limbs and seeking a break from creation. Perhaps the canvas was only one facet, she needed to explore other mediums to articulate her convictions. The thought sparked something adventurous within her. The city called to her, alive with people parsing through their own struggles, each one wearing a facade, just as she had for so long. What if she captured their layered experiences as well? She'd step outside her bubble, gather perspectives, and perhaps merge their stories with her own, forming a richer tapestry for the reckoning. Determined, she headed to her favorite park, the gentle breeze invigorating her senses. As she took a seat on a weathered bench, she began observing the world, scribbling the nuances of human expressions. A mother cradling her child, a couple in a tender moment of laughter, a man sitting alone, his eyes cast downward. Each moment resonated like a brushstroke on her canvas of understanding, painting the myriad colors of human experience beyond her own. With each passing interaction, a new flicker inspired her, capturing fleeting joy, crushing sorrow, and everyday resilience. It dawned on Emily how profoundly interconnected lives were through the shared experience of pain and growth. In that realization, she found rekindled courage. If she wove her own story with those of others, the exhibition could become more than just her personal unveiling, it could transform into a shared experience of healing. As she returned to her studio that evening, invigorated by ideas, she felt the weight of the choice shift from oppressive to exhilarating. The narrative she wanted to weave became clearer, she would embrace the vulnerability not just of her own story, but the collective human experience. But what if her efforts led to backlash rather than acceptance? Would her intention be misconstrued by the very people she aimed to connect with? A new layer of anxiety crept in, challenging her resolve. The exhibition was shaping into a philosophical and emotional tightrope walk. As she began sketching again, the brush hovered above the canvas, her heartbeat accelerating with the stakes. This would not be easy. Could she blend her art and community narrative cohesively, creating pieces that conveyed both intimacy and the universal struggle for understanding? The questions lingered ominously as she prepared to embark on this new and uncertain journey, standing at the fragile intersection of expression and fear. And in that moment of uncertainty, she paused, grappling with what awaited her. Was she ready to embrace both the beauty and the criticism that might stem from sharing so much? More importantly, what awaited her on the other side of this confrontation? As the dawn broke the next day, Emily awoke with a renewed sense of urgency. The questions from the previous evening swirled in her mind as she moved through her morning routine. Today, she felt an electric tide of possibility coursing through her veins. It was time to dig deeper and confront not just her fears, but the very narratives that had shaped her. Her studio felt different, as if the walls themselves had absorbed her doubts and were now vibrating with her commitment to change. She sat at her table, pen poised above sketchbook pages that awaited her revelations. Instead of feeling daunted by the enormity of her journey, she acknowledged the breadth of her experience, both the pain and the liberation that came from sharing. A quick glance out the window reminded her of the energy pulsing beyond her four walls. She grabbed her bag, not knowing where the path would lead her but leaning into the excitement of the unknown. The city was a canvas in itself, alive with stories desperately waiting to be told. As she walked, Emily felt the seams of her own existence loosening. With each step, she drew closer to those who echoed her struggles. The sights and sounds enveloped her. Street musicians played both joyful and mournful tunes, a poignant reminder of life's duality. She approached a small cafe filled with customers, each absorbed in their own worlds, yet their lives overlapping in rich complexity. The waft of freshly baked pastries and brewed coffee filled the air, offering a temporary shelter against her storm of thoughts. She set up her small drawing pad at a corner table. With each sketch she made, she let the noise and chatter around her seep into her art, transcending her own narrative into something collective. There was a woman laughing with abandon, a barista with tired eyes working tirelessly, a couple bickering quietly, but love still echoed behind their words. In this space of creativity, Emily felt something shift. Conversations sparked her curiosity and courage, each detail piqued her instincts, compelling her to incorporate these characters into the reckoning. People passed by her view, and she penned notes of their expressions, their lives unfolding like stories seeking an audience, but just as quickly as the tide surged, it ebbed. A flicker of doubt raised its head. What if her interpretation seemed exploitative? Would the very essence of her subjects be lost in her artistic endeavor? This concern dug into her, anchoring her to the choice that lay ahead. She needed to confront this doubt head-on. After finishing her sketches, Emily approached the barista, a young woman whose name tag read Jasmine. They began chatting about the struggles of the daily grind, and Emily felt an unexpected kinship and understanding of the shared human experience blossomed between them. "Do you ever feel like you're fighting against the current?" Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper yet charged with intensity. Jasmine paused, her expression shifting from busy professionalism to contemplative deliberation. "Every day. But sometimes, those little moments," she gestured towards an elderly man smiling as he sipped his coffee, "they make it worth it. It's a struggle, but it's ours." The visceral truth in Jasmine's words struck a chord. It mirrored Emily's own struggle, cascading off the walls of her mind. And perhaps, threaded into that revelation, were the seeds of connection she sought for her exhibition. As she returned to her studio that evening, the sketches brimming with life and raw emotion, she grappled with a new understanding. Her art did not have to keep a safe distance from pain, it could embrace it, embody it. Each encounter, each story, could be a delicate brushstroke, an invitation for others to step into a shared exploration of existence. her heart raced as she approached the canvas, buoyed by the possibilities. She would weave vulnerability with the authenticity of others, pairing her truth with the whispers of their struggles. But what if the thread she combined unraveled into chaos rather than coherence? With each stroke of the brush, she risked exposing herself further, challenging what she thought she knew about herself and the world. The stakes rose, her insecurities still present but overshadowed by a growing determination. Emily took a deep breath and embraced the unknown. It was time for her reckoning to transcend beyond the personal, transforming it into a visceral representation of life, the beauty, the heartbreak, the community of experiences. Yet just as clarity emerged, a shadow loomed. Who would she invite into this journey, and what would they see? The uncertainty echoed loudly in her mind as she turned the lights off in her studio, knowing her upcoming choices would either grant her artistic freedom or shackle her in fear. In the quiet solitude of her thoughts, a new question surfaced: was she prepared to challenge the boundaries of both her art and herself, ready to risk everything for a shared narrative? Emily stood before her exhibition, The Reckoning, and felt the surge of emotions she had once feared. The venue was filled with laughter, quiet conversations, and the gentle clinking of glasses. Each face, once filled with apprehension, now reflected curiosity as they moved between her creations. Each piece of art, a fragment of her journey, captured the complexities of her life, her heartache, her resilience, and her determination to rise. As the evening progressed, she remembered the first brush strokes filled with both self-doubt and liberation. She had challenged herself to confront her past, intertwining it with the lives of others, gathering fragments of their stories alongside her own. In the act of creation, she had turned pain into purpose, unveiling the strength that had long lurked beneath her vulnerability. This exhibition wasn't just about her, it became a communal tapestry, embodying the shared experience of humanity. Each sculpture stood as a testament to her growth, resonating with attendees who gazed upon them. A woman approached, her eyes glistening as she studied the self-portrait Emily had crafted, a representation of the struggles they had both faced. "I see myself in this," she said, her voice cracking under the weight of recognition. "You've captured something we often hide." In that moment, Emily felt an exhilarating sense of fulfillment. She had crafted not just art, but a bridge, one that enabled others to connect, to share, and to heal. Conversations flowed like currents, bringing forth insights from different perspectives. The weight she had carried for so long began to feel lighter, each discussion, a release. Throughout the evening, a recurring theme emerged: courage. Emily realized that through her expressive vulnerability, she had ignited a spark in others, encouraging them to confront their lives' complexities alongside her. Each narrative exchanged slashed through her residual doubts, reminding her of the strength that came from authenticity. Then she spotted Grace, her mentor, moving through the crowd with pride radiating from her every gesture. The elderly woman approached Emily with a knowing smile, her eyes gleaming with encouragement. "You've shown them the power of reclaiming one's story. You've woven your new identity beautifully." A rush of warmth enveloped Emily, the respect and recognition from those she admired validated her journey. Yet, the moment of true confrontation approached as her former partner appeared at the doorway, his presence weighty, yet softened by vulnerability. He stood hesitantly, as if sensing the thick air around them, but something inside Emily shifted. Rather than retreating or rehashing past grievances, she had confronted the pieces of herself he represented and grown beyond them. Their gaze met, and for the first time, she felt neither resentment nor nostalgia, but understanding. "May I?" he offered, gesturing towards a nearby sculpture, a reflection of complexity and rebirth. She nodded, allowing him to step forward as they both observed the work that echoed their shared turmoil. Their silent connection spoke volumes. It was crystal clear that while the past had shaped her, it would not dictate her future. This was an acknowledgement of growth, a testament to the journey they both had yet to embrace. "Thank you for this," he said quietly, his expression earnest. In that moment, Emily affirmed the choice she had made during their past conversations. The power to define her narrative had always belonged to her. She had unlocked that door wide open. "It's time for both of us to move forward," she responded, clarity surfacing 20-fold. It felt liberating. She had not just done the work, she had proven that she was not the girl from before, but a determined woman who had conquered her fears. The final acknowledgement of her evolution came when she received an unexpected award from a local art association acknowledging her bravery in tapping into personal narratives and healing through art. The recognition felt earned, a culmination of all the hard-fought battles she had undertaken. Emily found herself at the center of her own universe, glowing in their gaze, craving not just applause but authentic connection. The reception faded into a blur as she locked onto her goals: a successful career as an artist and educator, a strong bond with her child who was perched happily in the audience, and the power to articulate her own growth story openly. As the exhibition began to wind down and the last guests trickled out, Emily collected herself at the center of the studio. The fully realized scope of what she had achieved settled deeply within her. She had become a beacon of hope. She had demonstrated that despite the shadows of the past, one could emerge whole. Now, standing in her studio, bathed in the afterglow of her triumph, Emily was resolute. She had rediscovered herself, transformed her adversity into strength, and boldly created a new narrative, one that would propel her into the future with unyielding confidence. The boundaries she had once feared became her foundation, paving the way for her to inspire others to embark on their own journeys of transformation. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. This is the moment to show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share, because only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.